Folks, welcome back to UnWoKeN, the number one podcast in the world for young conservative media, and that's a fact. My facts, of course, are the only ones that matter anyway. John Doe, I miss you, man.
How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing good. How you doing? You looking good?
Thank you. Yeah, man, it's been a little bit. It's been a little bit.
Is that like a new face mask that conditions your pores and everything?
Oh, you already know, man. Gotta stay pretty, right? How else am I gonna make some money?
That's right. That's right. Well, man, this is a really cool episode to be doing with you. So I appreciate your time talking to us. So what if we start off with a little bit of what you do?
All right. I am a private military contractor, and I am currently out on mission. I'm working along the border.
So whenever you say a private contractor, are you basically a mercenary?
Uh, Technically, yes. But the thing is, we are hired private military. But for the most part, we do a lot more executive protection bodyguard work than what you would see in a group like Wagner. You got Wagner off in Israel and that entire Ukraine doing whatever they do. Here, a lot of U.S. vets and a lot of people who are in the United States that are working in that industry, we focus more on executive protection.
Some people might sit here and say, okay, this is Scott with uh, either dressing up or playing a part, or this is one of Scott's buddies who's dressing up and just doing this kind of crazy interview to make it look like he's actually talking to somebody who's doing these things. So why don't you tell me or let everybody know how many years, or not the exact number, but how long, in fact, you've been in the military and the tours you've done and where you've been? You don't have to get specific, obviously, but
Right.
just some of your accolades.
I have 4 years total spent in war zones. I've been to both Iraq and Afghanistan. I left just before the abandonment of Afghanistan. I was actually stationed on HKIA, the air base where everything left from. I was law enforcement for several years before I enlisted, and I've been contracting on and off for a couple years now. I've been to 30 some odd countries. I've worked in many of those. I've been in 130 some odd like designated combat missions. We didn't fight on all of those. We started off in infantry, worked in military intelligence for a while, and now here I am.
So what is it that you exactly do at the border?
Well, right now we're doing Operation Lone Star. I like to call it Operation It's Your Problem Now. And we've been hired to escort the buses of illegals and drop them off in sanctuary cities.
So y'all are pulling a DeSantis, and instead of bringing them all to Martha's Vineyard, you're dropping them off at every sanctuary city.
Absolutely.
That seems fair.
Absolutely. Including in front of Kamala Harris's house. Literally, one of our drop offs is just down the street.
No shit.
Yeah.
Does that present problems?
Oh, yeah. You expect to get detained by Secret Service. And, there are not everybody is in support of this. There's a lot of political football with this particular contract. Not everybody supports us. There are certain cities that we have to avoid because there are law enforcement agencies that are looking out for us, that are trying to stop what we're doing. And of course, the media on both sides of the fence are trying to use us for their own political gain. We're just out here. A lot of the contractors are just out here doing the job.
So whenever you are detained by the Secret Service, how the fuck do you get out of that situation?
You have to tell them what we're doing. They know why we're there. They know why we're there. They're just there to make sure we're not causing any trouble. I don't want to get too specific with it.
Yeah,
I don't want any details.
So that sounds like what you're doing. Actually, what I would say is fair. Some might say, why aren't you taking them to back to the border and across? But I'm seeing it from your view and saying, okay, well, drop them off in the sanctuary cities. If people already say they want them, or they'll take them. Let them bankrupt all these other cities. Let them bankrupt the liberal cities. Let them get
That's
a
why,
taste of their medicine.
that's why I say it's Operation They're Your Problem Now. I mean, you can't ask for something and then complain when you get it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm just here doing the job, you know? It's not my authority or it's not my position to make any sort of judgment calls on anything. I'm just here doing it, getting
Do
them there safe.
any of them speak English?
A few of them speak English, and it's not just like the immigrants that we have, they're not all Mexican. We've had Polish guys, we've had white guys. I speak a language that isn't English or Spanish. I'm not going into it because it's a kind of unique language and would potentially give away who I am. So I spoke that language and I saw heads look up. So it's people from all over the world that are out here and we're just dropping them off.
And is it that easy for them to be able to get into the country?
I don't know. That's beyond something that I can answer. I do know that there are specific pickup points, and when we get there, there's a lot of pickup points, man. We'll go 6, 7, 50-person buses deep sometimes and do these pickups. So it's quite a bit of people.
So what would be the difference between what y'all do and something a mercenary does?
Well, again, mercenary it is an appropriate word for what we do because we are privately hired military. But we're not, I don't go out and shoot people for money.
Yeah.
You know, what I focus on and what the vast majority of contractors that are American and from the United States concentrate on is more the protective side of the house. For example, like you have your Paul Blart security teams that you see at most places, right? When you call for security. But if you want real security that's backed by actual combat experience, by law enforcement experience, we have a bunch of former SWAT guys out here. That's when you hire somebody like me. And you're going to pay for somebody like me. I'm not cheap to hire.
Because of the skills that you possess.
Right. Skills, experience, and training.
Man, so it just seems like you're a fucking badass. I mean, I've told you that many times before, but man,
It is, man.
it's a badass. It's like I'm talking to Liam Neeson and Taken right now. I possess a certain amount of skills, which
Right, I do think that's a
enable me to take you out real quick.
But I mean, that's kind of what happens, though. I mean, when you spend your entire adult life in the military and then you get hurt or you leave for some reason, and then you do have all this experience and certain specific skill sets, and there's no real market. I mean, what am I going to do in an office job,
Yeah.
right? Like 10 years ago, I was leading soldiers into battle in Iraq. Actually, 13 years ago today, I was leading soldiers into combat in Iraq. And now what? I'm going to go be a manager at a Taco Bell? Imagine me in a corporate setting. Now, I will say for your listeners, your viewers, whatever, we have met before. We do know each other.
Mm.
So, you know me very well. Imagine me in a corporate setting, the first person that really gets out of line. Yeah, exactly.
No, it wouldn't
Exactly.
work. Would work.
I'm not world kind of person.
No, no, not at all, dude. It's
No.
it's like people like you are very unique because it takes a certain kind of person with a certain kind of psychology to be able to do the things that y'all do.
I really like the way Jordan Peterson likes to put it. It's, you should be capable of extreme violence. You should be capable of doing all these things, but you don't have to use it. Being peaceful without the option of violence is not a virtue. That just makes you harmless.
A weak man is a very dangerous man.
Or the other thing that I like to refer it to is the gardener, the warrior in the garden, the old parable of the warrior in the garden, where a master is speaking to a student, and a student asks him, you always speak of peace, but yet you're prepared for war. And the master tells him it's far better to be that warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war. It's much better to be prepared, to be fit, to be trained, and nothing happens than when you encounter your own personal emergency and you don't have the skill set to do anything about it. Because at the end of the day, for everybody, no one's coming. No one's coming. When seconds count, the police are minutes away. So you need to be prepared to self-recover. And, when you make a lifetime dedicated to that mindset, this is what happens.
So what went wrong in Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, we just gave up. We gave up. In Afghanistan, there was a clear delineation between the civilians, the terrorists, and NATO forces. I worked very closely with a lot of, the ANA and a lot of local civilians. And we were doing really good there. We were improving their infrastructure. Most of the Afghan civilians loved us being out there. Out of everyone that I know that I knew out there, all of two people made it back because we just abandoned the country. It wasn't a withdrawal. There was no stepped plan. There was no planning to it to begin with. We literally abandoned those people to terrorists. And that's not something that I personally can forgive the current administration for. People I know, people I worked with, people that I developed relationships for are all ghosts now. And they died horribly because they worked with the United States.
I remember us having that discussion one time, and we should be ashamed for, dude. I want to touch back on something that we were talking about whenever you mentioned the VA, and this is another conversation we've had. If there's one thing in this country that works without any flaws whatsoever, no matter what, it should be the fucking VA.
I agree. I agree.
We send 18-year-olds and up to war to die for our country, to lose limbs, put their life on the line, and they come back here and sometimes the VA works. The majority of the time, they are left with absolutely fucking no help. You want to talk about help? What the soldier suicide should be first.
Well, you can even use my personal example. I mean, I got out because I got injured in an earthquake. And even several years after I've been out, I'm still trying to fight them because they're still trying to tell me, my back injuries weren't service connected. Or the TBIs, the amount of times that I've been blown up, had my skull crushed in. They're still trying to tell me that none of those things are service connected. And, it takes sometimes a year to even get seen. When I was first out, my mind was not right. I was under a lot of stress. It was a really rough time in my life, and I needed psychological support. It took me 9 months to see a therapist.
That's bullshit,
and
dude.
Then, and then it took me going through 4 different therapists to find one who wouldn't cry when I was telling my stories. That's my trauma. You're supposed to help me out with it. If you can't handle my trauma, what the fuck are you doing working for the VA?
Absolute bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Absolutely.
And how do you expect people? We have a decline in military numbers, right? Am I correct?
Right. Yeah.
How do you expect people to want to join the greatest military in the world whenever they know that when they come back, they won't be taken care of?
You can't. You can't. They made us all promises and they failed to get through them. You know, they failed any sort of follow through. My
Now,
exit from the military was a handshake and a boot in the ass. And that was after a decade and a half of service
that falls
because I,
on Washington, D.C.
because I got hurt. I was a combat veteran, above top secret security clearance, and it was a handshake and a kick in the ass.
Man, let me ask you this too. Of all the military movies you've watched, which one is the most realistic fiction? Because for me, I think it would be Lone Survivor.
Black Hawk Down was really good. Lone Survivor was pretty close.
You know the story
Um,
behind Lone Survivor.
oh
Um,
yeah, Trail.
well, no,
Yeah,
no, not like whenever they were filming. So Latrell was approached by Hollywood, and after they read the book, when Peter Berg approached Marcus Luttrell with the idea for the movie, Luttrell said no because Hollywood's gonna fuck it up.
yeah,
So in order for them to do this movie, Taylor Kitsch, Mark Wahlberg, and the other 2 actors, every actor in this movie had to go through a form of SEAL and military training. And they had SEALs and military personnel on set the entire time. And if they were holding a gun the wrong way, if their fingers were on a different placement or in the wrong place, they'd yell cut and make them hold it correctly, man. And then that roll, they go down the hill and roll and tumble. They actually had to do that without, of course, breaking their backs like you saw, but they had to go through that actual shit. And to me, that is, if you're going to make a military movie like that, that is as great as it gets because you actually are giving respect to the men who lost their lives for you to be able to make this movie.
absolutely. That attention to detail was greatly, greatly appreciated. One that I liked personally was American Sniper. Now, a lot of like the story, there was a lot of Hollywood in that movie, but the way they portrayed Iraq was exceptionally well done. I remember when that movie came out, I was in town on leave and I went and watched it with my father. And there was a certain point where I turned to him and I said, "Hey, Dad, I know what this scene smells like." Because their portrayal of just how Iraq was with, you couldn't trust anyone in Iraq. The little kids would kill you just as easy as the women, just as easy as everybody else.
So what
And
was, I'm sorry.
no, no worries. So yeah, I would definitely say those would be the top three: Lone Survivor, American Sniper, and Black Hawk Down.
Man,
Actually, the first Red movie, because there's more of them, but they're all awful. But the first Jarhead movie was also really well done. That's a really, really true to life, accurate one too.
but what is a normal procedure in Iraq or Afghanistan whenever you're clearing out somebody's house? Like, how do you determine which house you're going into?
Well, normally there's an investigation, and again, I don't want to go into too many details, but there's some form of surveillance. There's a lot of three-letter agencies that were out there working with us. There was our own intelligence gathering services. I mean, I was in intelligence doing a lot of the gathering, and we'll figure out say that there's a bomb maker in the house, and then we come up with a plan. We sand table it. You practice the plan several times until you think you got it. And once everybody has a nice warm and fuzzy, you execute.
So can you give us from your brilliant military mind, can you give us some perspective on how critical this Hamas or this Palestine and Israel war is right now? How critical is this?
So this is a rough one because, to tell you the truth, the government of Israel, I don't think has the best intentions of the Israeli people all the time. I mean, I've seen videos from Israel of Israeli police attacking Orthodox and Chabad Jews, right? So it's really just a terrible situation from all sides. Like, who do you really throw the towel in? Throw your support in behind.
Well, see, I
Uh,
right citizenship to Israel because my dad was Jewish.
right, right. No, no. And there's a difference between a nation and its government.
Yeah,
If there's anything to be taken from this, there's a difference between a nation and its government. Just like here, we aren't the current administration. We aren't the last administration. We're Americans, right? And we're trying to do the best thing by American standards. Now, I've beat up on Israel a little bit, but on the other side of that, you have Hamas. Hamas is a literal terrorist organization. There is nothing that Hamas can do that will make them not terrorists. They're executing children. They are torturing people. What I think is funny is a lot of the people who were talking about how they want to punch Nazis 6 months ago are now talking about people who want to exterminate Jews completely off the face of the planet. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what's more important than anything in that conflict, and again, this is my own personal opinion, is that Hamas itself gets eliminated.
yeah, I agree.
Because
I agree.
you historically, and before Hamas took over, there were, Palestinian Muslims and Jews living in that area peacefully. Hamas is a fairly recent thing, and the conflict, it doesn't have to be there. You just have terrorists in charge. So, at the long and short of it, we can go into whatever nuance you want, but at the end of the day, Hamas must be eliminated.
Who's the biggest threat to the United States right now?
China is the closest near peer, um, but it depends on what you mean by threat. Like, China has an amazing cyber program. But if you're talking about a mainland invasion of the United States is never going to be successful.
Because you heard what President China said about that. He said, if you ever try to invade the United States, there'll be an American behind every single blade of grass with a gun.
Right, right. The United States, I know this, the United States has something like 48% of the world's registered privately owned firearms. Now, the key word in that is registered. There are very few states that actually require registration. So I don't think any external threat could really do anything on mainland US. If anything, it's going to be internal threats. If anything would be a true threat to the United States as it exists, as a country, as a nation, as a people, it's going to be something internal. Right now, we have both sides of the political spectrum are radicalizing. It's something called dichotomy building, where you have A side and B side. And A side radicalizes and they may do something, they may act, they may not act, but in defense of A side radicalizing, B side will turn around and radicalize to kind of counter the radicalization of A side. And we're seeing this. We're seeing this in the rise of violent and potentially violent groups on both sides of the fence. Like, look at one of the examples that I like to use is Antifa and the Proud Boys, right? If
Well,
anti, if Antifa, just roll with me, right? If Antifa didn't exist and wasn't committing acts of domestic terrorism and violence on behalf of their political beliefs, the Proud Boys wouldn't need to exist.
bingo. And you know, it's funny you say that because I remember before 2016, I had a few conversations with friends who were liberal because during that Trump election, I was working for the Trump campaign, doing social media volunteering. And I had a Trump sticker on my car parked at campus, and my car got keyed with the sticker coming off. And that was one of the days where I finally lost my shit. And I was having a conversation. I put a big old Trump sign inside the car the next day, and I put a camera, said, "Take this one down, motherfucker." Well, I was having a conversation with a few friends who are liberal. They're the good kind of liberal, the ones that actually mean liberal. They're open to new ideas.
But
And
classically,
I said, at the end of the day, I said, y'all need to get a hold of this shit. I said, because if you don't, people like me and all the people who are like me will begin to lose their patience. And
absolutely,
whenever we lose our patience, it's no good for you. You don't want that to happen. You do not. Because
and,
people like me will fight back. And I don't
and
care what your fucking gender studies degree will do for you at that point. Because the moment that you get in front of somebody who will fight back and you get a group of them together, all those Antifa and fucking far left little pricks cower beneath everything. The moment it comes to violence is whenever we start to lose altogether as a country, because then you just stop viewing each other as Americans. You view each other as left or right. And you can be somebody who's not an extreme leftist, or you can be somebody who's not an alt right. Dude, they would consider me by today's political standards, I would be considered alt right just because my views are extremely conservative. Am I
absolutely.
alt right? No. Do I believe the Proud Boys need to exist? Yes. Do I think they are a terrorist organization? No, I
I
don't.
wouldn't. Proud Boys. Okay, so terrorism. A lot of people get this wrong. Terrorism has a very specific definition and a very specific meaning. Right? You don't have the Proud Boys as of yet because you never know. You never know with some of these groups. Any one of these groups could have a splinter that radicalizes and they get a wild hair and decide to do something, right? So, I don't want to say, oh, they're blameless. And then, like, the moment this podcast goes live, somebody on that side goes crazy. But as of yet, the Proud Boys have not committed any acts of terrorism. Terrorism is a very specific charge, right? Antifa has, BLM has. A lot of these far left groups have 100% fulfilled the legal definition of what terrorism is, right? But I want to harp on something that you said, especially when it comes to the two-way. The Second Amendment debate is a really, really big linchpin of it, right? You have these politicians like Beto O'Rourke, Bartholomew, whatever his name is. But when he sits there and goes, hell yeah, we're going to take your AR-15. Hell yeah, we're going to take your AK-47. What people like that don't understand is that those platforms and firearms in general are so prolific within the United States that that would be a nuclear option. You can't take those firearms from the people without inciting a literal civil war. So I'm going to bring this all back to your original question. That is the biggest threat to the United States. It's that internal division. You know, people on both sides don't want to let people just be people. And I think it's far easier to bring up a more classical liberal belief to your modern conservative than it is to bring up any sort of conservative belief to somebody who's on the new American left, this new generation of leftism that's coming from. Because conservatives are for the most part, there are crazy people on both sides. I think we can admit that, right?
Yeah.
But conservatives, by and large, are more open to logicking something out. You can bring up a belief that you have that may not be in line with the average conservative platform. But if you can make your statement, you can make your argument, and you can do it in a way that uses facts, logic, and understanding, you can change a conservative person's mind.
Yeah.
Now, the left as right now, what's that?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
The new American, what I call the American left as it stands right now, are very emotionally driven. They don't care about the facts. They don't care about the logic. Again, when I said earlier, you had people who were sitting there 6 months ago talking about punching Nazis who are now, supporting a terrorist organization who 100% wants to eliminate Jews off the face of the planet, right? They're doing that because they are being emotionally led and manipulated into that stance. Because a thinking person isn't going to sit back and go, you know what, we really should kill all of these minorities. Because that doesn't make any sense.
No, like, liberal is somebody who wants you to think like them. The conservative is somebody who just wants you to think.
Well, I wouldn't even say somebody that wants you to think like them, somebody that wants you to feel like they do.
Yeah, and that's impossible. That's almost like being in a relationship and saying, okay, well, my partner did this, I'm mad at that, and just completely not talking to them, and expecting them to feel what you're feeling without communicating that.
Correct. Correct. And that's why we have a lot of the division that we have right now.
So,
Because you can't do that.
so let me ask you this. So, what's the most dangerous part about your job now?
Uh, I'm debating how much detail I could go into right now. There's a lot of scrutiny by a lot of different groups. We have American three-letter agencies watching what we do really close. We have cartels watching us really close.
Cartel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The cartels are actively aware of what we're doing. Um, we had a bus get stopped by the cartels I'm not going to give that specifics away, but it was inside the continental borders of the United States.
What?
That was a whole mess, and again, I'm giving no further details beyond that. But that's a risk. That is a very real risk. And again, we also have, from the social dangers of it, uh, everyone's trying to play political football with the current job. Everyone is trying to. And we have the media looking out for us. And one of the reasons why I am trying to conceal my identity is that, both sides of the political spectrum are going to try and use our identities, if they're discovered, for their own personal gain.
Oh,
And not a one of us wants an example of. We're here doing our job. This is our 9 to 5.
But I just laugh because you see the complete contradiction of all these people who are saying we need to let them in, let them in. America's a nation of immigrants. Okay, well, whenever they get dropped on your doorsteps, that's completely different because you're going to start paying for them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very easy to be altruistic when you're not the one that has to do anything about it. And that goes right back to what I was saying earlier. You know, it's great to feel good. It feels good to say these things. But when the reality of it comes into play, when the logistics of it comes into play, then it becomes an issue.
How many presidents did you serve in the military under?
Three,
Was life better under a certain, was life better or worse under Trump?
the deployment under Trump was a different deployment. By that point in time, I had left I was no longer a line soldier. I was no longer a combat soldier. But I will tell you that the conditions and treatment were better than under Obama. Uh, the rules of engagement were also a lot better for us during the Trump era versus the Obama era.
What was the biggest differences
Um,
in terms of the rules of engagement?
so rules of engagement are always changing. You know, they will change from week to week to week. But under Obama, there was a span of time where you could have a enemy combatant, be it Mahdi Army, Taliban, Al Qaeda, you know, any of these groups could shoot at you and then drop the firearm. And as soon as they dropped their weapon, they were no longer considered to be an enemy combatant.
What?
Yeah, it was dumb, and I don't think that was ever taken seriously. But
That's
also under Obama, the guys videotaping us weren't considered to be enemy combatants. So the way a lot of these terrorist groups work is that they want video of them beating Americans or blowing up American convoys or what have you. So the camera guy, you know, you see somebody with a camera, that was an indication of either an IED or potential ambush, something bad. You got very nervous when you saw people with cameras in their hands. And under the Bush administration, smoke them. They are an enemy combatant just as much as the guys who were shooting at us with, you know, the AK-47s or the RPG-7s or whatever. Under Obama, they were treated as non-combatants, so we had to do our best to capture them live.
and many lives were lost.
Yeah, absolutely. American lives were definitely lost because of that enforced hesitation.
That's one of those things where unless you are or have served in the military, like people in Congress should not be making those calls.
I agree. I agree.
What's your opinion of General Milley?
I don't want to get into detail. It's not a very positive opinion. I'll say that.
Yeah, I hate to ever say anything bad about anybody who's ever served in the military.
Bad leadership exists. And the thing about generals or any officer that, I guess, any officer that's a colonel or higher is that a lot of them are so far removed from the day to day soldier. They are so far removed from these line units that it's the same kind of gap that you're looking at when you have the CEO of a company versus, you know, the guy working in the mailroom. They live in two entirely different worlds. They have entirely different perceptions. So what makes sense to general bean counter in front of cameras all the time isn't going to make sense to the guy who is digging a hole in the sand to sleep in.
Mhm. Yeah, the reason I'm able to criticize General Milley is because I think he is obviously been politically bought at this point.
Absolutely. There's this, once you reach a certain rank in the military, especially on the officer side, but it happens on the non-commissioned officer side as well, the job does become political. And there is a lot of, unfortunately, influence peddling. And, you know, like, okay, so your cousin is an executive with this company, so you can throw them contracts for military equipment or, you know, services. Pretending that doesn't happen would be ignorant.
Yeah, 100%.
We know each other outside of this, and you know, I trust your opinion on a lot of things, man. I trust your opinion on a lot of things. You make a lot of sense. And I'm glad you invited me on here. It's good to get the word out. Hopefully, you know, give some people a little bit more information. I know my entire career field of private military contractor, we don't really always get the best reputation. We are often looked at like the bad guys because people do think mercenary whenever they hear us. But you know, just a lot of us are just veterans with no other option. I mean, I enjoy it. I do enjoy this kind of work.
Yeah, I know, because you bite the head off a damn snake
Right.
without even
Yeah.
filleting it or adding Tony's to it, bro.
Oh yeah. Man, I could go for some Tonys right now.
I'll ship you some.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll ship you some.
man,
I
I'm
wonder,
gonna hold you to.
well, like, given I was going to Amazon drone it, but if you heard a drone coming by, you'd probably shoot it out the sky.
Right. Yeah,
I do
may
have one.
not be.
I have one question to ask you because I called this bullshit whenever I heard it. Somebody once told me that spotters for snipers are a better shot than the sniper, and I said, uh, why would a spot? Well, then wouldn't it make more sense for the person who's a better shooter to take the fucking shot?
Right. No, that's how it works. And the thing about sniper teams is that they're teams. No, it's not 100% going to be the same sniper all the time. They both need to be proficient. Like a sniper and a spotter can easily swap positions and still be effective most of the time.
The
But
technology.
no, the spotter is there to spot. The sniper is there to make the shot.
Whenever he was talking about him on Conan, Chris Kyle goes, Carlos Hathcock's the greatest sniper in U.S. history because he didn't have any of the technology that we have or any of the scopes that we have, and he was taking people out just like that.
Absolutely. We have a lot of technology, and the rifles that we use are really nice. I had the opportunity to get behind an M110, which is a precision rifle platform that the United States military uses. And when I tell you that thing was an absolute hand laid work of art, and Carlos Hathcock was doing this with nothing special. You know,
You,
he didn't have anything that was precisely fine tuned, match grade, anything matched silencer. No, he was just out doing the thing.
you want to know how I learned how to shoot a gun, bro? My parent took me
How's
out
that?
in the back of Laurelville, Louisiana, and he stabbed a snake hole, and out came a pregnant cottonmouth, which were very aggressive, and already it's for stabbing the hole. And I'm 10 years old, and he tosses me a 30-06 within 15 feet of the snake and said, "Shoot it, boy."
Hell
Well,
yeah.
as this snake's coming at me, I blasted in the stomach, and the son bitch still kept coming at me and blasted in the head. Hey, to this day, bro, this day, whenever I see you again, let's go to the range because I think I can prove it. One of the best shots there is around, man.
Oh man, I got some things we could go shoot. Could be a lot of fun.
Hey, bro, I'll hit some shit now. I'll hit a bottle cap off a tree from 200 yards out.
All right, you say that. We'll find out.
Hey, I did. I got the video of it. Oh yeah.
You did. No, you showed me that video. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey, bro, this is the Cajun connection right here.
We'll shoot something a little higher caliber than what you were
Hey,
shooting at.
I shot a 50 cal one time. My damn shoulder nearly blew out. No, it wasn't a 50
Yeah.
cal. It was a Dragunov.
I got a FAL that's an FAL, one of my favorite rifles. We'll go shoot that.
Oh, the F and FAL.
Yes.
Woo! Call of Duty, bro.
Uh, kinda.
John, I appreciate your time, man. Thank you for everything you're doing. I miss you, brother. I love you, man, and I'm proud of you. Thank you for giving us this time, dude.
Absolutely, brother. It was my pleasure. And we'll have to go meet up again when I get back into town.
All right, brother. Well, that sounds good. Well, folks, the one and only John Doe. That's all. Still, we're getting used to that one. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of UnWoKeN, the #1 podcast in the world for young conservative media. We'll see you next week.